We've seen the media hype about beacons. We've read about proof of concepts and how they are the latest and sexiest devices that hit the Internet of Things. Beacons are here to stay. Now is the time to get serious in your business about the impact of these devices. This year alone, beacons are set to influence over $4 billion of retail sales, and that number is set to grow tenfold by next year. At Pulsate, we get asked a lot about beacons. How do I deploy them in my location? How do I merge them with CRM data and behaviors? And how do I action push notifications in real time? So today's episode addresses 10 things you need to know in your business to put beacons to work. Let's get into it. So before starting off this episode, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do in Pulsate. Sometimes there's a bit of confusion. We're not actually a beacon company. We don't provide any hardware. We do allow you to add beacons to our platform, and that's because we want you to understand customers in terms of physical locations and their context and when they come in. So we look at beacons more as the cherry on top of the contextual cake, and below those layers we have CRM data and behaviors and interests. And when you combine all of these together, you can do some really interesting things. So to start off with, what is a beacon and how do they work? Well, I like to use the analogy of a lighthouse. A beacon has one simple purpose in life, and that is to send out a signal and say, I am here. It's completely unaware of any mobile devices that are around it. It doesn't connect to them. It doesn't steal their data. It doesn't know anything. It just sends out the signal and says, hey, I'm here. I'm a beacon, much in the same way a lighthouse would. It doesn't see the ships. The ships are the mobile devices. They can all see the beacon or the lighthouse, and they can't see it. So beacons don't have any data on them. They don't really connect to the internet. They are a very simple device. They have a universally unique identifier, a major and minor. I'll get a little bit later into that, what that actually means and how you can adjust the parameters of your beacons for success in your deployment. So beacons are, they're used in many different situations, from retail to museums, airlines and airports, and even sometimes indoor navigation. A beacon can be a physical hardware device that is just for the purpose of being a beacon. They can even be battery powered, like some of the devices I'm going to go through in a moment. They can even be a mobile device, an iPad, an iPhone, an Android device. They all have Bluetooth capable low energy antennas, so they can be a beacon as well. They can send out the packets and can be interpreted as beacons. Usually beacons are pretty platform independent. Apple did come out originally with the iBeacon protocol, and there's a lot of confusion between beacons. Do Apple own beacons, and what is an iBeacon versus a beacon? Well, a beacon is the physical device with the antenna and the Bluetooth low energy stack that can send out packets, and iBeacon is like a layout of that packet. So you can have various different layouts from different manufacturers, and the iBeacon one is proprietary to Apple, but that doesn't mean that Android devices and other devices can see these beacons as well. But we're heading towards other type of packet layouts being available, like Alt Beacon and Eddystone. I'm going to be covering Eddystone in more detail in a later video, in a later episode. But the thing to note is that beacons and iBeacons are not really just for Apple devices, and you can use them across your entire customer base, which is very important. They're not necessarily internet connected, so these beacons, once you position them, as I've said, they're very like a lighthouse. So they send out this signal. They're unaware of themselves and any other devices that are around them. They're not connecting to the internet. They're not connecting to Wi-Fi. They're just sending out these Bluetooth low energy packets, and they're saying, hey, I'm here. See me, take action if you want. So by default, the vast majority of beacons that are out there, they're not connected to the internet. However, we are seeing things like meshing and hubs coming online from various companies. We're going to cover some of the hardware providers in just a moment. And this means that eventually some of the beacons will be internet connected. So it's a probability that they will be able to send some device level data back to a platform, but generally this is used more for kind of like remote updating your beacons, maintenance, understanding which beacons have run out of battery, which ones need to be replaced, which ones might have some issues, and is less about tracking. So do beacons steal your data? We get asked this an awful lot. A beacon is not capable of seeing any other devices around itself. Back to the analogy of the lighthouse, one simple purpose in life. I'm a beacon, I send out my signal. That's all I do. If there are devices there to see it, that's great. If there aren't, nothing happens. So they can't see devices, therefore they don't connect to them, they don't steal any data off the device. You actually need to have explicit opt-in from your customers. They need to download your mobile app, they need to give access to location, and then by doing that, you can take one of your beacon IDs of a beacon you have in a physical location and ask the app and operating system to monitor for that specific beacon ID, and then when the mobile device sees it in the wild, it will let the app know that it has seen a beacon, and then the app can go back to your server and say, hey, as customer ABC, I've seen XYZ beacon, and then you know to take action. Opt-in is required, the download is required, so privacy is very important with beacons. It is very well locked down. It shouldn't be a customer concern. Beacons are pretty okay at determining distance. We use a thing called received signal strength, which is the line of sight from the device's Bluetooth antenna to the beacon. The problem with this, especially in iOS, is that it only works in the foreground. So you can't actually do ranging and distances when the app is in the background, when the screen is off, which makes it very difficult to determine location. Even when the screen is on, it can kind of be a little bit unreliable. You will get this kind of jitter that it will think you're like immediate, then far, then within short range, and it kind of moves around. So it shouldn't be used for accurate targeting. A much better way we find is to just use multiple beacons, put them all over your location, and then to basically adjust the antenna power of each beacon to suit the individual use case. So you can actually tune the TX power of your beacon to be 2 meters, 10 meters, 70 meters, if that's your use case. And then when you get an entry for that beacon, that's when you deliver the push notification, or that's when you take that event in and produce the action. Having a beacon powered up to its max and relying on the user to have the app open or the phone unlocked so that you can range, it's a little bit flaky for that reason. And then the received signal strength ranging, again, it's not the way we would do it for commercial use cases. We do recommend multiple beacons and adjusting your antenna power to suit the use case. So over to hardware and how the devices stack up against each other, different beacons that you can use for various types of deployments. So there's a few things that you're going to need to consider. How long do you want your beacon to last versus how far do you want it to broadcast for? I mentioned before that you could power your beacon anywhere from 2 meters, 10 meters, 20, right up to 70. So depending on the TX power of your beacon will impact battery life. So unless you need that beacon powered up to 70 meters, you want to kind of bring it back down to the lowest possible need for that use case. And that means that you can actually save some power on your beacon, save the juice. It might last for, as an example, a beacon powered up to 70 meters, might only last 6 months, where if you have it down to 2 meters, you might actually get 2 whole years out of your beacon. And this is because Bluetooth Low Energy is very efficient in terms of the packets that it sends out and the energy that it requires. So that's down to range versus time. Frequency is also very important to consider. Apple recommend that you send out your beacon packets 10 times a second, which is kind of excessive, especially for battery-powered beacons, because that's just pretty taxing. It's a big power requirement. It's good if you need to catch people very quickly. For example, if you have a beacon outside your store and you're looking to catch passers-by, you want that beacon sending out its packet quite frequently. Whereas if people are kind of just browsing around your store, they're captive, you have them there, it might be enough to just send your beacon packet out every second. And that means that you can save a lot of battery power, considering the time that you need that beacon to work for, and the power output that it needs, the range that you need the antenna to go for, and then how many times you send out packets within that period are all very, very important. Weather is also a factor, so that will come down to your manufacturer of choice. Which beacon do you choose if you need to be positioning outdoors and you want them to be weatherproof or waterproof? This also comes into consideration what the use case will be. There are new options coming online which see beacons being produced inside of light bulbs. So as a retailer, if you're fitting out a new space, you can have your beacons pre-built into light bulbs, which then correspond to very well mapped locations in the store. I know wall sockets as well are also starting to ship with beacons. But what's on the market now in terms of what's being used and the providers that are out there, we have in the roundup, we've got kind of like Contact.io, Estimote, who are good for developer kits, Radius Networks, and there are various other USB beacons. So let me give you a quick look at what we have here. I have mentioned at the beginning that a mobile device can be a beacon in of itself. You don't need specific custom hardware to achieve that goal. One company that really stands out quite a lot, and they were one of the very early beacon manufacturers based out of Krakow in Poland, are Contact.io. So they've produced a great range of beacons built on the Nordic semiconductor chip, also featuring a Wi-Fi hub. And this means that you can update your beacons over the air and you don't have to walk around and change each beacon settings individually. So it can be great to log on via the Wi-Fi hub, change the TX power, the frequency of your beacons if the use cases change, and then automatically manage your fleet, understand what beacons are up and what beacons are down, and a great piece of kit. Radius Networks have some pretty good beacons as well. Again, they're quite ruggedized, waterproof casing with long life batteries. I think these last up to 5 years if you configure them correctly and have the right frequency and the right range configured on the beacon. We have another beacon here from Ascent Systems in Barcelona. Kind of like an entry-level beacon, runs on a Texas Instruments chip and will last for probably about 2 years. An Estimote beacon, this has been taken out of its case. I'm not sure where that's gone, but this is basically a battery-powered beacon, runs again on Nordic semiconductor. The main chipsets are pretty much Texas Instruments and Nordic. So across all the different beacon vendors, they're the two most common chip types. So this is what an Estimote looks like. It does have a silicon case that kind of resembles this one here. This is a Chinese beacon, pretty much a rip-off of the Estimote. Not a bad beacon as well. Battery replaceable. Estimotes aren't. You need to rip them open with a Stanley blade to replace your batteries. This is another generic Chinese beacon, runs on Texas Instruments. So you can see they're quite similar. The printed circuit board layouts are pretty similar. Similar antenna design, and they both just take a coin battery. Our friends at PayPal have also produced a beacon. This is a USB beacon. You can get a range of USB beacons now that you can connect them into your point of sale system. You can connect them into a wall socket, and this means that if you're not sensitive to power being available in the location, you can put in a bunch of these and not ever have to worry about your battery going flat basically and having to maintain them. So these are a great option where you have power. However, if you don't have power, you're going to want to go for a battery powered beacon that allow you to position them anywhere that you want without having to fit electrical sockets, especially if you want to move these things around a little bit. Cambridge Silicon Radio have also produced their own beacons. This is a very ruggedized beacon again, takes 2 AA batteries, can last for about 5 years. And we have Sensoro, who are a Chinese company, produce actually some very nice looking beacons, probably pretty similar to an Estimote, great for developer kits. The one company, as I said before, it does stand out in the ecosystem is Contact.io. Their hardware, we believe, is being produced more for commercial deployments. They really care about the issues surrounding how do I deploy hundreds or thousands of these beacons and actually manage this at scale. So that kind of covers off some of the hardware considerations that you would need to go over when you're thinking about how do I put beacons into my location? How am I going to manage the fleet? There are a number of options there for them. Beacons can really help you with customer insights, helping you to understand, typically how long do they spend in my store, how often do they dwell beside particular products, and this can really stem into retargeting, because if customers spend a great deal of time in this store versus another store, and this product grouping versus another, you might do some retargeting across one of your ad networks, or maybe in your app, or maybe when they log on to the e-commerce store, you're going to tell them about a few products they looked at in the physical world that they did not buy, and then see if you can try and upsell or cross-sell that to them in the virtual world. You can also understand what their preferred product groupings might be, what their shopping habits and interests might be as well, and typically what do they do in your location, what kind of patterns do they take around the store, and you can take this back into your strategy, into your business to inform future decision making. So how do you actually influence sales? How do you get the results? Well, half of beacon messages to date have actually been couponing, according to Shopkick. Retail Me Not have accounted for over 3.5 billion of retail sales for the year 2013. You can use beacons at the right time and place to give them that virtual tap on the shoulder and say, can we take your order? Would you like some help? Would you like a personal shopper dispatched to your location? Here's your boarding pass for today. Would you like to get an upgraded priority boarding so you can skip the queue? Loyalty is also something that's going to be very important for beacons as well. Rewarding not only transactions but physical presence in the store, and getting click and collect orders ready as soon as they walk in and letting them know. And in general, just giving you good product information that things are around you that you can explore the physical environment using your virtual device. So beacons can be a great way as well to deliver cross-sells or upsells within your application. So we've discussed a lot about proximity and learning about customers. So when you take in this data, you need to make sure that you're segmenting it properly so that you're offering customers coupons or information on products that they're not only proximal to, but things that they're actually interested in. So you need to develop segmentation in your database, on your server, or to kind of buy in some mobile marketing platform that allows you to segment in real time. So it's based on interest behavior, previous purchases and transactions, and I'm actually being offered things that I am near, that I'm interested to, that are completely tailored to my situation. In terms of when you should reach out, you're tapping someone on the shoulder and saying, thank you, you've just arrived. Would you like to use your loyalty app for this transaction? We can also reward people for their behaviors in certain locations, and not only reward based on the number of transactions that you have, but by actually doing things in the physical world, by browsing the store, or the number of times that you might arrive could actually give you extra credits, unlock badges, or rewards within your app. Beacons are also available now. I know a lot of this stuff sounds like it might be from Minority Report, but all of this technology is available to leverage in your business today. Beacons are very affordable, they're practical, they're easy to install. It's not science fiction. These things can be put to work today in your company. So remember, when you're deploying beacons, make sure that you tune the TX power so that you're not wasting the battery on board your beacon. Make sure it's tuned to the exact scenario, so when someone enters that beacon region, they're going to get that notification, or you're going to track them at that point. I wouldn't try to use receive signal strength to gauge what distance they might be at. Tune the frequency to be probably about 1 second, unless your use case requires you to catch people going by very frequently. You probably only need a 2 to 5 meter TX power in terms of signal distance, and probably about 1 second in terms of frequency. When positioning your beacons, what you need to know as well is that water or human bodies absorb Bluetooth low energy signal. So don't be afraid to take your beacon, position it up high. The ceiling's usually pretty good. Sometimes you can have beacons stolen, particularly if they're attractive and in various colors. People don't know what they are. They take them down. They're interested in them. That's why some of these more commercial beacons are just in plain white. They're more or less invisible. You deploy them and people don't see them. So throughout your strategy, remember that you've many options for choosing beacons. You need to pick the hardware provider that meets your use cases, tuned in the way that you need. You need to get proper opt-in from customers, ensure that you're not tracking any more information that you need. Remember, beacons don't need to be connected to the internet. They're not going to steal your customers' data once you assure them. You can use multiple phone types with the iBeacon protocol and other protocols coming on board. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and all of this information that you can use to take back into your mobile strategy and beaconize it. Looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Are we recording? And that number is set to double. No, it's not. It's going to go 10x by 2016. Let's go start again.